I'm Jennifer Grossman, and welcome to our latest episode of Ask the Atlas Society. I am so thrilled to be here with Andrew Cipher of Turning Point. He is a regional director, and Andrew, tell us a little bit about you and because I have known you since as long as I've known Turning Point, which has been about 4 years, and you guys have been around not that much longer. So tell us a little bit about you and your path. What brought you to Turning Point?
You know, it's interesting that Turning Point found me, and so they found me, and I found you about the same time, 4 years ago, almost to the date. So yeah, I'm originally from the Northwest. So I'm a Northwest baby, born and raised Northwest. And then I came down to Arizona for schooling, and got really involved in local politics, whether worked for some political consulting firms, worked on many campaigns like any other political junkie. And then Turning Point found me 4 years ago because they were looking for someone that had experience working with community and junior colleges. Because when I moved down to Arizona with the intent to go to ASU, I went to the community college while I got my in-state residency to transfer over to avoid the absurd out-of-state tuition. And so I had a lot of experience at the junior level college with junior colleges when it came to extracurriculars and then taking advantage of extracurriculars to get a full ride plus some to ASU. And so at that time, Turning Point was looking to how do we get beyond just tier 1 college universities and into junior college, get into high school. So they brought me on kind of as an experiment at the time to say, hey, can you take your previous experience in both politics and at the junior college and see if we can bring Turning Point's message and have it stick and actually build off that. Fortunately, I was very successful within Arizona's junior college system, which is the largest in the nation, actually.
Oh.
Maricopa Community College system is the largest community college system in the country. And so I was very successful and able to, spread that out. And then from that point in my career, I was able to just work my way up into Turning Point's leadership when it comes to our grassroots side of things. And now, actually, I am their field enterprise director, or what used to be called the national field director for Turning Point.
Okay. Well, to me, one of the saddest things about the lockdown is the fact that I don't get to see you and your smiling face, and you always have such great energy, and you're just a shining presence at the Turning Point events. And I know we also share an interest in Ayn Rand. So I understand you have a few questions.
Sure do. Yeah, thank you for having me on. So one thing that Turning Point has done really well is that we're really good at enlarging the conservative libertarian movement per se through innovative messaging that really resonates with young voters, right? Youth voters or young college students, high school students. One thing I want to know is Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism. What is a good way to explain objectivism to young Americans that will really resonate with them?
Well, being in high school, in college, or just being in that age, you're in a transition. You're going from a time in your life when all of the decisions were, made for you. What we're gonna have for dinner? What time are you gonna go to bed? What, the rules are. And you're now transitioning to a time where you have to make decisions for yourself. And you're starting to question big questions like what's the meaning of life? Why am I here on earth? How do I even know that I'm here, on earth? I'm being told by my professors, this is the truth, not how to think, but what to think. I'm being told this is what you should do. This is what we expect by your parents. You're being told by friends or by other young adults, this is how you need to act in order to be accepted or be popular. But you're being told by your girlfriend or your boyfriend, this is what you need to do for me to love you. And how do you figure all of that out? And philosophy is really there to help you to figure it out. And it starts in terms of objectivism. It has 5 branches. It has metaphysics, what is the nature of reality. And in objectivism, it is reality exists as an objective absolute. There is the epistemology. How do I know? And in objectivism, it's reason, it's logic. That's how you know. It is ethics, and it is a rejection of self-sacrifice. It is a ethics of rational and benevolent self-interest. It is politics, and that is laissez-faire politics and laissez-faire economics, and that is a big overlap with Turning Point. And then there are the aesthetics, and that is sort of a romantic realism that you can see on display in Ayn Rand's literature.
Yeah, it's interesting. The one that really stands out to me when I've been studying Ayn Rand was the focus on self-interest, selfishness per se. I found that really interesting, the fact, because you're always, I think in our society, you're taught, especially nowadays with social justice warriors and everything, in the PC culture, you're taught not to be selfish, to put yourself second and put everyone else first. And so during this time of quarantine, at this strange time, students and young professionals have a lot of time on their hands. And when it comes to thinking and really studying Ayn Rand's philosophy of self-interest and selfishness, how can they turn that to their advantage during this time when they have ample time to really apply it to their life?
Well, first a word about selfishness. Okay, Ayn Rand was a brilliant novelist. She was a philosopher, but she was also a provocateur. And this is going to be shocking to some people, but she in some ways reminds me of my friend Ann Coulter. And though they have different ideologies, they both were excelled at using words for shocking effect. And Ayn Rand did that because she really wanted to shock people out of conventional wisdom. So she didn't shy away from expressing her ideas in sometimes shocking fashion and talking about self-interest. She didn't invent that idea. The founding fathers talked about your right to your life and your right to pursue your happiness. But she chose to express that famously as the virtue of selfishness. And intellectually, I think it's a good challenge to think through what it means to be selfless, to always put others before yourself. But I would argue that the real estate, the understanding of the word selfish is so ingrained in our language that it's almost impossible to just rebrand it as rational self-interest. But we could try this exercise. I know a woman, we all know people like this. She happens to have married a very wealthy man. She spends a lot of time, flaunting her wealth. And she's always asking for favors. She's always asking for access. She's always asking for other people to do things for her. And in the process, she's earned a reputation of being kind of selfish. And that, reputation, I would say, is not, in her rational self-interest. So, in thinking, rational self-interest is about not sacrificing yourself to others, but also not sacrificing others to yourself. So in this time of quarantine, I would say to be rationally self-interest would be to think through and think ahead. Where do you want to be in 5 years? And realize that the choice to do something is also the choice to not do something. So thinking of how you're going to be using this time, thinking through what kind of relationship do you want to be in 5 years, what kind of job do you want to be in 5 years, and what can you do right now to get there. You may not know all of it, but you can start with a few basics, and you can start by building up, your mental muscles, because that's what's going to take you through life. So don't keep fit, but also maybe take this time to start building up your spiritual and your mental facility in order to put yourself in a better position to take advantage of future opportunities. And then also just think about your friends, those people that are in your life that you value, and maybe evaluate, whether or not those are the right friends, or are those people adding value to your life. Are they helping you to accomplish your objectives, or are they a net drain? And you may need to fire some of your friends to make room for some new friends. But above all, like, if you haven't read Ayn Rand, now would be the time to start. And thank you to Turning Point for making the graphic novel available to students in the activism kits. And if there are students out there that are listening that would like to get a copy of that, or like to get a copy of, like, the Pocket Guide to Objectivism, let Andrew know, or let me know, and we'll
you can go to the website and order an activism kit, and it should be included. It's funny. Twitter is very active right now with everyone being home. I saw a tweet by Anna Kendrick, a movie star, and she posed the question. She's like, we always think to ourselves, if only I had more time, I would get all this done.
Mm-hmm.
And she tweeted it and just left it like that, obviously insinuating that she's not doing everything she thought she'd be able to do with all this ample time. She's not making the most of her time that she has right now. And that kind of made me think, and that's why I posed the question to you, is so many of us think that way, especially college students, especially, people, young professionals, or anyone that just is very ambitious and active in their day-to-day life. This quarantine has disrupted our routine, where it's given us that time to say, what should I be doing with my time, with this extra time that I have in my hands? How should I be making the most of it? So I really liked your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who says they're bored, or that they have too much time on their hands, they're telling you a lot about themselves. And this is an unprecedented time in some ways, but it's also a good practice for the next crisis, whether it's going to be a national crisis, whether it's going to be a natural disaster. I mean, I've lived through natural disasters in my own life. My house burned down in Malibu, and I rebuilt it. And the house actually that you'll see in the graphic novel is the house that I built. And I couldn't stand it at the time when people would say, well, look at the bright side. I mean, I wasn't looking for sympathy, but I was like, no, this was like a huge loss. I was underinsured. It was like really very, very devastating. This is extraordinarily devastating for people who are losing their jobs, or now kind of concerned that their income, their livelihood, and possibly their life is at risk. But what I would say is that one thing, death and taxes are inevitable, and unfortunately higher taxes may be coming as a result of this crisis, and those seeking to take advantage of it in order to expand government's role. And that, to me, is the people like to call the 1% greedy, but it's really the people that are seeking something for nothing, whether it's in a position of power in government, or by getting government subsidies or government benefits that are the truly greedy ones. But even a crisis, you're going to have other crises. You are going to, hopefully not, but the likelihood is we live in a rough and tumble free market system. We want that creative destruction, and sometimes that destruction will hit you, and you will lose things that are of value to you. You will be struck with an illness. You will lose a parent, and so developing those skills right now to face that crisis that will come. Because I guess I would say one thing, and this is an important one for young people to remember: every bad situation can be made much worse. And even if you're going to be okay, you know, in this situation, you will face another crisis coming up. So just developing that, you know, that muscle memory of, this is how I act when my house burns down. You know, this is what happens when we get locked down. This is what happens when our nation faces a terrorist attack. Those are the muscle memories that are going to set you up to be more resilient, to be more agile, to be more positive, and to be of greater service, you know, in the future.
And it's honestly what, you know, everything you just said about like going through these difficult moments and learning from them to be prepared. Because one of the, you know, something that we know is going to happen again is there will be more catastrophes in the future, right? There will be more natural disasters, whether it be a pandemic or earthquake or whatever. That's one thing we can count on, is how do we prepare ourselves now? And Ayn Rand really does speak to that. You know, it's funny, I first heard of Ayn Rand my freshman year in a political ideologies class.
Wow.
And
okay.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if that's common or not, but that was my first time in her. And my professor talked about her briefly, watched some clips, and it didn't really resonate with me at the time. And even though there's a lot of overlap, and you know, some people would call me a political wonk per se, but it didn't resonate with me until later on, it was with Turning Point actually. When I started working with Turning Point, I watched Alice Shrugged. And that was the first time that I really took interest in her novels. I was like, oh, okay, what, you know, sometimes you read, like, you watch the Harry Potter movie and then you're like, okay, the book's always better. So that was my mentality. So I went to go read the book, because I'm like, I love the concept of what she's trying to teach here in the movie. And that wasn't even her. It was, you know, obviously that was based off her novel. But what about, I think what sets Ayn Rand apart from other people, you know, other philosophers, great thinkers, you know, disruptors of the 20th century, is her novels. And her fictional novels, of all things, were what really took her message and disseminated it across the world. What about her fictional novels were so impactful?
I completely agree with you on that. You know, a friend of mine, Jeffrey Tucker, said that before Ayn Rand, the fight for liberty was merely intellectual, and after Ayn Rand, it was deeply spiritual. There's something, first of all, just about narrative. I mean, if you go back to our beginnings as a human race, we communicated information through stories, you know, through pictures, and a story paints a mental picture. You know, it's one thing to just give information, this is the class and this is what you need to learn, but it's another thing to see it play out in a way where there is good, where there is evil. And Ayn Rand's novels were unique in that that they had good guys, they had bad guys. There was something at stake. It wasn't just your everyday thing. And a lot of the sort of postmodern literature, you know, there's kind of good guys, there's kind of bad guys. Also, you know, if we make it sort of murky and we just put in a whole bunch of like words that people don't understand, you know, we muddy the waters to make them appear deep. Ayn Rand's novels were deep, but they're also a lot of fun. And there's, you know, sex, and there's, you know, there's business, and there's bad guys, you know, masterminds trying to take people down. So she integrated plot, and the plots are great. She integrated the characters, and she integrated, you know, the themes. And so I think that's what makes them really mesmerizing. And, but they're not for everybody. I kind of separate, there's two kinds of people when it comes to, let's say, Atlas Shrugged. There's the people that I meet that say, oh, I read it, I couldn't get through it. And then there's the other kind of people like you and I that say, I started reading it and I couldn't put it down, because it's very suspenseful. And I am very proud of that project. That was one of the first initiatives that we did with Turning Point, that was made possible by Diana Davis Spencer, who wanted, she loved the movies too, and she wanted to sponsor having the movie nights for the Turning Point students. And I think it really grabbed a lot of kids, and it got them more interested in going deeper with the ideas.
It worked, because I mean,
it worked for you.
Yeah, it worked for me. I could speak to it, because it wasn't until I saw the movie that I was like, okay, I want to read the book. And then I really started to dive into Ayn Rand more. But it would have never happened if it wasn't for that opportunity, because my professor I don't think gave her a fair shake. And so
I'm not surprised. Why am I not surprised?
Which is why Turning Point exists on college campuses, because it's so one-sided, the monologue. It is a monologue. It's not dialogue. It's not diversity of thought.
Right.
Well, in closing, I really want to know, Jag, is for someone like you who's had such a successful career and been able to experience so much, and I love your history. I mean, you grew up in a Peace Corps family, right? Am I correct? In a Peace Corps family.
I'm in my parents' house now. Lockdown. Lockdown with liberals, whom I love.
In San Francisco.
In San Francisco, yeah.
Your story is so unconventional.
This is a trigger. I think this is probably illegal in San Francisco. I just found out in San Francisco, it is illegal to sell these, and it's apparently probably also illegal to promote capitalism. So.
Good thing you're stuck inside, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so you're I guess you could say your story is very unconventional. So I want to know, for those that are listening, how did you encounter Ayn Rand, and when did it really become part of your life, right? Was there a time when you heard about it, but it wasn't really part of you? When did it really become part of you, and why?
Well, thanks for the question. And the story is actually encapsulated in our very beta first Draw My Life that I did as a total, experiment as we were pioneering that format. But I first, actually, I kind of really discovered Ayn Rand later, I guess, relatively later in life. I was at my 20s, in my 20s, and I was working at the Cato Institute. And I, kind of around the proverbial water cooler, I heard people talking about this guy, John Galt. And I was like, I asked somebody, who is John Galt? And they said, exactly. And I was like, no, really, who's John Galt? And then they were like, well, you actually have not, how did you even get in here that you don't know that? Here, take the book, go home, and, I really wouldn't recommend that you come back until you can answer this question. So I did, and I was definitely one of those people who it just totally locked for me and made a lot of sense. And I ended up reading it over the course of a few days, and then went on to read and reread everything else that she wrote. And the looking back, I think that for me, it really connected because I had been sent to public schools at a time, of forced busing, and in Massachusetts. It was a very liberal school was a very liberal state, and I was, you know, I was different. I was, you know, it was born in India. I, you know, wore like sparkly, you know, before now everybody, all the kids wear the tiaras and the, you know, little tutus. I was doing that. I started that trend. No. So, and I was very studious. I was really kind of and I was like, wanted to study. I wanted to achieve. I was competitive. I wanted to get the best grades. And I found myself like on trial for being conceited. And, you know, I, I was really confused, and I was like, what is, I don't even know what conceited is. But, you know, if it meant that, you know, I thought highly of myself, I had self-esteem, then, you know, guilty as charged. So, so that I think experience had made it kind of made my mind fertile ground for Ayn Rand's message of if you are going to be criticized and penalized for achieving, for your virtues, then you don't have to just go along to get along. You can reject that. You can call that out, you know, as the evil that it is, and you can live for yourself. And I think it also resonated as a woman, because, you know, we are wired differently than men. We are also raised, you know, to be nurturing, to be more, you know, selfless, to put others before ourselves. My mother, who you know, was raised a Catholic, I think definitely, and is a social worker, you know, definitely had that ingrained. And so, you know, to have boundaries, you know, to know that it was okay to put myself first, and that did not mean sacrificing other people to myself. It meant being of value, making alliances with like-minded people. I think that's why it really resonated for me. And then when the crisis came, when I lost my job, you know, when I lost a relationship or two, you know, when my house burned down, you know, I was prepared. I had the tools. I had the mental stamina, and I had the logic and the reason in order to get through it and come out stronger on the other side.
It's a beautiful story. Yeah. No, I've seen the novel. I've seen your what do you call them? The sketch videos?
Oh, the Draw My Life. The Draw My Life.
Drama of your life.
Yeah.
I just wanted those to hear it because.
Well, you know, I have been fortunate to host a few of the Turning Point leadership at my house, and so but you have a standing invitation, Andrew. So after all of this is over, we've got to get you and your family out to Malibu, and
oh, especially this time of year when it's beautiful and everything's green and lush. Oh, I'd love to be there.
Well, I'm sure I'll see you in Arizona before that, and I'll see you at the next. When is the next conference that is on the schedule currently?
So next conference that is on the schedule is our teenage. That is in DC, end of July. Pending, you know, that everything, the corona, you know, moves on, this whole, you know, coronavirus, that we're able to get on with our lives without too many more casualties. But so that's still TBD. That's what we're planning on right now.
Well, we will see you there, and we will, you know, the Turning Point is going to survive and thrive, and so is the Atlas Society. And I'm just grateful, tremendously grateful for our partnership and your leadership. So thanks for joining me today.